and welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks. This is Justin Peach, and this is our weekly news roundup of all the transfers that have happened over the past 7 days. So without further ado, may as well jump straight into things with Southampton, who have signed defender Ryan Manning on a free. He was out of contract at Swansea, was attracting plenty of interest from around the Championship. It's always going to be a great signing for whichever Championship side got him, Justin, and that's turned out to be Southampton.
Well, when you're getting the league's best left back from last season on a free transfer, it's always going to be a good value for money signing, isn't it? Statistically, he was a standout player at left wing back for Swansea last year, and I think that relationship with Russell Martin's a big win as well. The familiarity of the system, the expectations, the needs, it's a big plus. And again, it adds a natural left-footed player to that side for Southampton, because I know they've got Livramento, they've got Walker-Peters, they've got options, but Manning, for me, again, you've got a player who knows exactly what the Championship's about. He wants to step up into the Premier League, and this represents a really good opportunity to do that. And as I say, he knows Russell Martin. He's a very good player. It's a good signing all around.
Yeah, Ryan Manning had an unbelievable season with Swansea, averaged the most chances created per game in the whole of the Championship last season, and that's from a left-back. He's exceptional going forwards, much better going forwards than defensively, but I wouldn't say he's necessarily weak defensively. Southampton are getting someone who also understands how Russell Martin wants to play, which I think is really important. I think he played the second most passes last season in the Swansea team. Clearly enjoys playing for him as well, because he's followed him down to the South Coast. It'd be weird if he didn't. So on a free transfer, it's a great move. Speaking of Southampton, they've also signed 19-year-old midfielder Shea Charles from Man City for a deal reportedly worth around £15 million. It's worth saying it's probably based on things like Southampton getting promoted or how many appearances he makes, that kind of thing. So they're not paying out the whole £15 million right now, I imagine. Even so, it seems like an awful lot for someone who's played 27 minutes of club football at senior level so far.
It's always a risk, isn't it, when you're shelling out that much money for a player who hasn't had much first-team experience. But I think the other side of the coin is if Man City are willing to get rid of him as well, then it's a case of, is he that good? We won't know until he starts playing games. But if Southampton are willing to pay that much money, that significant of a fee for him, then certainly worth the risk. And again, they've got money to spend. I know it's a contentious subject with a lot of Championship supporters, especially with clubs coming down with parachute payments. But essentially, yeah, Southampton have got that money to spend, and if they're willing to invest it in a young player, then it's much better than buying a 30-year-old for the same fee who's not going to get any who's not going to give the club any resale value in the future. And I think as well as that, Southampton have had some success in recruiting young players and developing them. Gavin Bazanu arrived last season. Tony Livramento, I know he's had an injury, but he looked a really exciting prospect up until that injury. Kyle Walker-Peters has thrived since coming in from Spurs. I know he wasn't that young, but still, you're getting a player from a top six club and developing them, giving the opportunity to thrive. So they have got a history of doing it, and I think Charles can fit that category. Should he pick up some minutes?
Yeah, I don't really know what to make of this one. I'll always support a club in, getting a young lad in and trying to invest time into that player. It does seem like they've overpaid a fair bit. I mean, literally only 27 minutes played at senior level. We haven't really got anything to judge him off about how good he is. What I will say is if Southampton's aim is to get back to the Premier League at the first time of asking, probably could have spent the money a bit differently, but we'll wait and see, because who knows really if he's that good or not. Cardiff have signed striker Karlan on a season-long loan from West Bromwich Albion. The 25-year-old scored 3 times in 31 games for the Albion last season. I really like this signing. He's coming off the back of a really poor season with West Brom, and his performances there had dropped off quite significantly last season. However, prior to that, he's been a brilliant striker at this level, so I'm hoping we'll see that player again. I think it will help that he's linking back up with Callum Robinson, who we had a great partnership with at West Brom. At the end of the day, Cardiff needed to improve massively going forwards. Karlan helps with that, and for me, it's a much better move than getting in Aaron Ramsey.
I was going to say I'm more excited by this signing than Aaron Ramsey, but I mean, I'm speaking not as a Cardiff supporter, I'm speaking purely as a neutral, and looking at that front three and how fluid it could potentially be. My mouth's watering at the thought of it. 21-22, Grant scored 18. It was a really good season. 21-22 season, that is. Callum Robinson picked up 7, assisted 9. And him and Carlan Grant developed a really good working relationship on the pitch. And I think that's the key thing here. As well as that, you've got Grant who can play centrally, Robinson can play centrally, Mete can play centrally. They can all play on each flank. There's a lot of fluidity in that front three, as I was mentioning. And again, if you're looking to really get excited, that front three is a much more exciting prospect than picking up Aaron Ramsey and, as I say, as a neutral. And it's not a dig at Ramsey. I just think that front three could be very dangerous in the Championship next season. And again, it could pull Cardiff up the table. Defensively last season, they were pretty decent. They were okay. They weren't as bad as where they were in the table, shall we say. They just weren't scoring goals. They've addressed that majorly, and they've got a player in Karlan Grant who's got a point to prove, and he's got a lot of potential still at this level to really get going. So I don't think we've really seen the best of him properly. So I think having that platform to do so, especially with a player like Callum Robson, we'll get the best out of him.
Meanwhile, Ramsey's return to Cardiff has now been confirmed. We've spoken about that deal already a lot on the podcast, Justin. Anything you want to add now that it's actually done?
I think he may well be a success. I'll stand by my point of not particularly being overly excited with the signing. I don't think a lot of Championship clubs would have picked him up, mainly because he probably would have demanded a higher wage at another club as opposed to Cardiff, where he's probably taken a bit of a pay cut. Was linked with a move to Saudi Arabia as well. The injury record worries me a little bit. I think there'll be more important players for Cardiff in that midfield than Aaron Ramsey. Don't get me wrong, I think it's an emotional move and that could spark something. But as I say, I think every point I've made is I'm going to stick by. I'm just not overly impressed with it.
Let's move on to Birmingham, whose busy transfer window has continued. They brought in Wolves defender Dion Sanderson for a fee reported to be around £2 million. The 23-year-old signed a 4-year deal and was on loan at St Andrews last season. Birmingham have done some excellent business so far. £2 million on Dion Sanderson. I'm not sure I'd necessarily say that's excellent compared to the other business they've done in my eyes. I think it's all right. Yes, he's only 23, so he could get a lot better, and there's plenty of room for him to grow as a player. Is he actually that good? I think he's solid. I wouldn't say he's amazing, but maybe there's more to come from him.
I agree with you. I'm not taken aback by it. It's a signing that made sense given how consistent Sanderson was last season, and that's just it. He's a consistent performer. He will get you 6.8 out of 10 every week, which doesn't do anything spectacular, but he's a reliable player. He's a player who doesn't he's not going to make too many defense splitting passes from centre back. Not many centre backs do, but he's not a ball carrying defender. He's just a solid, reliable, flexible defender. Can play right back, can play centre back, can play right of a back three as well. So he gives Eustace options. And again, I think maybe having a permanent home, we might start to see the best of him. And obviously, if Eustace is signing essentially a new squad, we might see the best of Eustace as well, because I don't think we got to see the potential of how Eustace ball can really start to flourish, and that might get something out of Sanderson as well. So there's the potential there, but yeah, maybe £2 million on just a solid defender might be a bit of a stretch, but they've done some really good business so far, and they need reinforcements at the back, and Sanderson fills that big hole.
Yeah, I think he's a long-term option, isn't he?
Yeah.
23, still very young for a defender in particular. So they hopefully will get the money back in the long run. We can say that for sure. Siriki Dembele has also joined Birmingham from Bournemouth for an undisclosed fee. Now, just you text me in the week when that transfer was being murmured, saying that top 6, if that transfer goes through, and now it's gone through.
Yeah, I do remember saying I'd throw my house on the thought of it as well, potentially. Might backtrack a little bit just in case, being homeless at the end of the year, just in the worry that Birmingham might drop off. But yeah, Dembele is a player for me who's been really undervalued, I think, over the last 18 months because he's not got much game time at Bournemouth. It was a move that didn't really make sense going from Peterborough to Bournemouth, mainly because the amount of attacking players Bournemouth had at the time. They just signed Todd Cantwell. It was part of that recruitment drive under Scott Parker. It was just really bizarre. Kiefer Moore, Todd Cantwell, there were several more. Yes, adding to the likes of Jaden Anthony, Dom Solanke, etc. It was a busy squad that didn't really need Dembele. But what Dembele brings is the ability to dribble past players. I don't think Birmingham have had a player of that quality for a long time. So when you've got someone like Dembele who's really effective picking ball up and just driving at defenders, he's going to get that team driving forwards and in good areas, which again I don't think Birmingham have had for a while. So for me, yeah, I think it's a move that can really spark the attack. That it needs a spark when you've got players like Scott Hogan, Troy Deeney, and Lucas Djukovic. They're not very good with the ball at the feet. Last season, I'm alluding to, and then with Djukovic and Hogan, with Dembele being added into the mix, there's a player there of real quality.
Yeah, I like Siriki Dembele. I'm not sure how much Birmingham have actually paid for him, but I can't imagine it'll be much. He has creativity, a bit of pace, ability to run at defenders. Still 26, so they're getting a great player in his prime years. So I do like this deal, assuming they haven't overpaid for him, which I don't think they would have, considering I haven't seen a fee banded about. Meanwhile, Tariff Chong has left Birmingham to go to Luton for £4 million. Cracking signing for Luton. That bit of a blow for Blues. I think he was a very important player for them. Leicester have signed defender Callum Doyle on loan from Man City. He was on loan at Coventry last season, was a key figure in getting them to the playoff final. A very talented boy, this lad. No teenager played more minutes than him in the Championship last season. Doesn't happen very often, does it? A teenager playing regularly at centre-back, but this is no ordinary teenager. He was like an experienced head at the back for Coventry, wasn't he? You couldn't tell. He was just a young lad, rock solid, good with the ball at his feet too. I think this could be a bit like Taylor Howard-Bellis going to Burnley last season. He just goes there, takes his game to a new level. Do you have a slight fear that he might not play much? Because I'm looking at Leicester centre-halves now and I'm wondering who's going to miss out because, some big names there at Leicester at the back for them. But this lad has enormous potential, could have an unbelievable season at Leicester.
I completely agree. I completely agree with the Howard-Bellis notion as well. He's a player, he's a bit younger than Howard-Bellis, but the last two seasons, Sunderland on loan in League One in the 21-22 season, he was brilliant. First team regular, 18, playing under Alex Neil and I think it was Lee Johnson. And again, really thriving in a tough league to thrive in. And being 18 in that league, it's not easy. And as I say, he thrived and did the same at Coventry in a season that was a difficult one for Coventry with all the off-field issues and everything going around it. He was a constant in that back line for Mark Robbins. I expect him to do the same for Leicester. I think if Maresca's going to want to play the style of play that he's going to want to deploy, i.e. playing it out from the back and really starting to progress it quickly through the thirds, you're going to need someone like Callum Doyle who's comfortable on the ball. I don't think Wout Faust, Connor Cody, Harry Suter are particularly, maybe not as good as Callum Doyle, but it might be a bit of a stretch to say, but I think Callum Doyle is probably the most advanced at doing so in those scenarios. So yeah, it's a signing that I really rate, really smart signing from Leicester. I think, as I say, it's a really shrewd one. I wouldn't have linked him with Leicester because you don't really see often big spending parachute payment teams picking up teenagers on loan from Premier League clubs who have just had a couple of seasons experience. So yeah, I think it's a really smart signing from Leicester.
Yeah, I do too. Coventry have sold striker Victor Gyökeres to Sporting Lisbon for a club record fee, thought to be at least £20 million. Not surprising at all. Looked inevitable that he was going to be going. Sporting Lisbon was a bit of a surprise when I initially saw that link, but it's been murmured around now for a number of weeks, hasn't it? So it always seemed inevitable in the end that he was going to be going to Portugal. Swansea have signed striker Jerry Yates from Blackpool for a reported £2.5 million. Thoughts, Justin?
I'm a bit of a Jerry Yates skeptic, but the link up with Michael Duff actually interests me quite a lot, mainly because last season was Jerry Yates' most productive season in Championship, but he went on a 18-19 game spell in the middle of the season without scoring. So it was very, very clinical in the first sort of quarter of the season and very clinical in the final quarter of the season. So for me, there's a bit of skepticism, but actually you've got a hard-working, pacey forward there who's good at getting into good positions in and around the box. And he was clinical last season. So if he carries that over under Michael Duff, I think he can do some damage. I think you can, if he's looking to get around 14, 15, again, I won't be surprised, but it's being able to just maintain that consistency. And it's a lot of money to spend, especially from Swansea's perspective, who don't particularly spend money very often. So yeah, it's a committed signing, I would say.
Yeah, you're saying you're a bit of a Jerry Yates skeptic. I'm not too sure about Jerry Yates either. Had an unbelievable start to last season, scoring 9 in 17 games. After that, it was 3 goals from open play in 27 games. Look, he works hard. He's quite good at linking up play. Would I have gone out my way to spend £2.5 million on him? Probably not. I think he's an all right Championship forward. If I'm looking to spend that money on someone, I'm looking for something a bit more than just an all right Championship forward. I'm looking for someone who's either got potential to be a really, really good player or someone who already is a really, really good player. So, I'm not too sure about that move, I've got to say. Bristol City have brought in midfielder Jason Knight in a deal worth around £1.75 million from Derby. Justin, you are, unfortunately for yourself, a Derby County fan. What do you think of that?
I think it's a really good signing for Bristol City. Obviously disappointed from a Derby perspective to lose Jason Knight, but it wasn't in the last year of his contract. Would argue that maybe Bristol City have overpaid just because he's in the last year of his contract coming from a League One team. Yeah, I was expecting sort of million and a half, but it's a fee rising to 2 million. So it's not an issue, but I think Derby have done very well in that deal. But yeah, Knight's a player who I think is a lot of his skill set's quite undervalued by a lot of people. Under Philip Koch, he was playing on the right hand side of the midfield and got into some really good areas. And Chris Martin would drop in deep and Chris running behind, and picked up quite a few goals doing so. So I think he's got a lot of potential to do that. And I think with Nigel Pearson, I know we've criticised him in the past, but Nigel Pearson's a manager who's probably going to get the best out of a player like Jason Knight because he likes hard-working, general-like midfielders in his midfield, and Jason Knight certainly fits the bill. As I say, as long as he just increases his goal count by 3 or 4 more, he will do really well. It's a good signing, and he's versatile as well, which is a big plus.
Yeah, I really like this signing. I think they've managed to get him for a bit of a bargain, really, in contrast to what you were saying, Justin. Incredibly hardworking, loves a tackle, good with the ball too. 186 games played at the age of 22, including 20 Ireland caps. Pretty impressive stuff for someone so young. So I think Bristol City have got themselves a bit of a bargain. Will Keane has joined Preston for an undisclosed fee from Wigan. Feels like a very Preston signing, doesn't it? 12 goals in a struggling Wigan side last season. It's a good return. Don't think he offers much else to the team apart from being a good goal scorer. 30 years old now, so you're not getting much longevity from him. I think he's a good signing, but not much more than that.
I think he'll hit double figures quite easily. He's hard-working. He's not just a target man. He likes to drop deep with the ball. We saw with Wigan last season, they're a team that don't create a lot of chances or didn't create a lot of chances. They were really poor going forward. So to still hit 12 goals, I think is really impressive. I think if he's in a more fluid front-thinking team, he probably would have got 15, 16 goals. He was picking up scraps, if we're being honest. You're right in terms of longevity, and his injury record maybe sort of alludes to that as well. But he's got a lot of lost years to make up for. So I'd say I think it's a really good signing. I think if he's partnered with the right player, Will Keane's going to drop deep. He's going to act as that target man. So if you've got someone like Emil Rees-Jakobsen when he's fit, I think it'd be a good partnership. Not particularly prolific, but he has been prolific over the last few years. So I think it's a smart signing, not a longevity one, but he's going to grab your goals.
Preston have also got in Huddersfield midfielder Dwayne Holmes. Ipswich have signed striker George Hurst. The 24-year-old joins from Leicester, was on loan at Portman Road last season. And finally, the exodus continues at Leeds. Rodrigo has gone to Qatari side Al Rayyan. Defender Rasmus Christensen has left to go to Roma. I'm not sure how many more players are going to be heading out the door at Leeds. Surely there can't be much more in the way of departures, but it wouldn't surprise me if there were a couple more before the transfer window closes. And there we go. That's your transfer roundup, ladies and gentlemen, for the Championship over the past week. Next episode on the podcast will be coming out on Thursday. That's where we're going through each team in the Championship and picking a key player each for the next season. If you want to listen to the latest episode of the podcast, boy, it's a doozy. We have ranked all the Championship managers from 24th to 1st, and the latest episode reveals our top 12. So make sure you go listen to that on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. This has been a Transfer Roundup. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for watching.